As of 2024, several significant conflicts continue to affect global stability and human welfare. Let me walk you through a quick analysis of the key ongoing wars, including the Russia-Ukraine War, the Syrian Civil War, the Yemeni Civil War, the Tigray War in Ethiopia, the conflict in Myanmar, and the Israel-Palestine conflict. I'll do a deep dive into each of these conflicts in subsequent videos, but for this video, each conflict is examined in terms of its origins, key actors, impacts, and prospects for resolution. War remains one of the most devastating phenomena, causing immense suffering, displacement, and destruction. The modern landscape of conflict is characterized by a blend of traditional state-based wars and complex civil conflicts involving non-state actors. This analysis aims to provide an in-depth understanding of the most significant ongoing wars, their underlying causes, and the broader implications for global peace and security. First up is the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the longest running and most contentious conflicts in the world, with roots dating back to the early 20th century. Well, technically, the roots date back to thousands of years ago, but in modern history, it all started amidst the First World War in November 1917, in particular, with the public statement announcing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Well, we know these words came from a pact called the Balfour Declaration. The opening words of the declaration represented the first public expression of support for Zionism by a major political power, which was the British government. The next 31 years saw large-scale upheaval, in particular the Arab Revolt between 1936 and 1939. But it was the year 1948 that gave the conflict its biggest shot in the arm. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 and the subsequent wars led to the displacement of many Palestinians, creating a complex and deeply entrenched territorial and nationalist dispute. So what are the key actors of this conflict? Israel, a nation-state established in 1948, engaged in ongoing conflict with Palestinian groups over territorial claims and security issues. Then Palestinian Authority, the governing body of the Palestinian territories seeking statehood and sovereignty over the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Hamas, an Islamist militant group that controls Gaza, opposed to Israel's existence and engaged in frequent hostilities. And then there is the international community. The United States, European Union, and various Arab states have played significant roles in attempting to mediate and influence the conflict. The conflict has led to repeated cycles of violence, resulting in substantial loss of life, particularly among Palestinian civilians. The blockade of Gaza and restrictions in the West Bank have created severe economic hardships and humanitarian challenges. Frequent flare-ups, such as the 2021 Gaza conflict, have further strained relations and hindered peace efforts. What are the prospects for resolution? Well, efforts to resolve the Israel-Palestine conflict have been ongoing for decades, with numerous peace initiatives failing to achieve a lasting solution. Key issues include the state of Jerusalem, Palestinian statehood, security concerns, and the right of return for Palestinian refugees. A two-state solution remains the most widely supported framework, but significant political and practical challenges persist. Next up is Russia-Ukraine War. The Russia-Ukraine War escalated dramatically in February 2022, marking a significant turning point in the post-Cold War Europe. The roots of this conflict trace back to Ukraine's 2014 Euromaidan protests, which led to the ousting of President Viktor Yanukovych and the subsequent annexation of Crimea by Russia. This annexation was followed by a protracted conflict in eastern Ukraine, where Russia-backed separatists fought against Ukrainian forces. The situation reached a new level of intensity in February 2022 when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russia's stated reasons included the protection of Russian-speaking populations in Ukraine and the need to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. Now, these claims were widely condemned by the international community as pretexts for aggression and territorial expansion by Russia. The key actors are Russian Federation, led by President Vladimir Putin. Russia has committed significant military resources to the conflict. The invasion has been marked by conventional warfare tactics, cyber operations, and disinformation campaigns. Then there is Ukraine. Under the leadership of President Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine has mounted a robust defense, bolstered by widespread national resistance and international support. Then you have NATO and EU. While not directly involved in the fighting, NATO and European Union member states have provided substantial military, economic, and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. They have also imposed several sanctions on Russia. Then there is international community. Various countries around the world have taken stances either supporting Ukraine or maintaining neutrality, influencing global diplomatic dynamics. Impacts. The war has had devastating impacts on Ukraine, with thousands of civilian casualties, widespread displacement, and extensive damage to infrastructure. The conflict has also triggered a significant refugee crisis, with millions fleeing to neighboring countries and beyond. Economically, the war has disrupted global supply chains, particularly in energy and agriculture, leading to rising prices and economic instability worldwide. What are the prospects for resolution? Efforts at diplomatic resolution have been challenging, with numerous ceasefires and peace talks failing to yield lasting results. The entrenched positions of both Russia and Ukraine, combined with the strategic interests of external actors, suggest that the conflict may continue for the foreseeable future unless a significant diplomatic breakthrough occurs. The Syrian Civil War. Syrian Civil War began in 2011 as part of the broader Arab Spring movement. Initially, peaceful protests against President Bashar al-Assad's regime were met with violent repression, leading to an armed uprising. Over time, the conflict evolved into a multi-sided civil war involving the Syrian government, various rebel factions, ISIS, and Kurdish forces. The key actors are Syrian government, led by President Bashar al-Assad. The government has retained control over significant portions of the country with the help of Russian and Iranian support. Rebel groups. A diverse array of rebel factions, ranging from moderate groups to Islamist extremists, have fought against the Assad regime. ISIS. Although significantly weakened, ISIS remains active in some regions, posing a continuing threat. Kurdish forces, primarily the Syrian Democratic Forces (SDF), which have been instrumental in fighting ISIS and seeking greater autonomy for Kurdish regions. Then there is international actors. Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the United States, as usual, have been heavily involved, each pursuing their strategic interests in the region. Impacts. The Syrian Civil War has resulted in catastrophic human suffering, with hundreds of thousands killed and millions displaced. Cities like Aleppo and Raqqa have been devastated, and country's infrastructure is in ruins. The war has also created a massive refugee crisis, with millions seeking asylum in neighboring countries and Europe. What are the prospects for resolution? Despite efforts by the United Nations and other international bodies, a comprehensive peace agreement remains elusive. The Assad regime has regained control over much of the country, but large areas, particularly in the north, remain contested. The involvement of multiple external powers complicates the prospects for a unified resolution. Then we move on to the Yemeni Civil War. The Yemeni Civil War began in 2014 when Houthi rebels, supported by Iran, seized the capital Sana'a and forced President Abdrabbuh Mansour Hadi to flee. This led to a Saudi-led coalition intervening in 2015 to restore Hadi's government. The conflict has since evolved into a complex proxy war involving regional powers. The key actors are Houthi rebels, an armed movement originating from northern Yemen supported by Iran. Then there is Saudi-led coalition comprising Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the other Arab states, aiming to restore the internationally recognized government. Then you have Yemeni government led by President Hadi, though its control over territory is limited. Then, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, both terrorist organizations, have taken advantage of the chaos to expand their own presence in Yemen. The impact: Yemen faces one of the world's worst humanitarian crises with millions suffering from food insecurity, lack of medical care, and displacement. The war has destroyed much of the country's infrastructure, exacerbated by blockades and airstrikes. The cholera outbreak and the COVID-19 pandemic have further strained the already dire situation. The prospects for resolution: numerous attempts at peace talks have been made, but a lasting resolution remains out of reach. The complexity of the conflict, with its regional and sectarian dimensions, poses significant challenges to achieving peace. Continued international pressure and humanitarian aid are critical to mitigating the crisis. And then there is Tigray War in Ethiopia. The Tigray War in Ethiopia began in November 2020, primarily as a conflict between Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) and Ethiopian government, led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Historical tensions, political marginalization, and ethnic divisions are key factors underlying the conflict. The key actors are Ethiopian government, led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, seeking to assert federal authority over the Tigray region. Then TPLF, a powerful political party and armed group in Tigray resisting federal control. Eritrean forces supporting the Ethiopian government against the TPLF. And then you have regional militias, various ethnic militias involved, adding to the complexity of the conflict. What are the impacts? The war has resulted in tens of thousands of deaths and widespread displacement. Reports of atrocities, including mass killings and sexual violence, have raised concerns about potential war crimes. The conflict has also exacerbated food insecurity and disrupted livelihoods, leading to a severe humanitarian crisis in the region. What are the prospects for resolution? Efforts at peace talks have faced numerous obstacles, with both sides accusing each other of violations. While a ceasefire agreement was reached in November 2022, the situation remains fragile and a comprehensive peace deal has yet to be achieved. International mediation and humanitarian assistance are crucial for the prospects of lasting peace. And then you have the conflict in Myanmar. Myanmar has been plagued by ethnic conflicts and civil strife for decades, but the situation escalated dramatically following the military coup in February 2021. The overthrow of the democratically elected government, led by Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy (NLD), sparked nationwide protests and a brutal military crackdown. The key actors are Myanmar military. Tatmadaw, led by Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, the military has seized control of the country and employed violent measures to suppress opposition. National Unity Government (NUG), formed by ousted lawmakers claiming to be the legitimate government of Myanmar. Ethnic armed groups. Numerous groups, including the Karen National Union (KNU) and the Kachin Independence Army (KIA), have intensified their struggle for autonomy against the military regime. Then there is civilian protesters. The Civil Disobedience Movement (CDM) has seen widespread participation from various sectors of society. The impact: the conflict has resulted in thousands of deaths, mass arrests, and widespread displacement. The military's use of force against civilians, including airstrikes and artillery bombardments, has caused significant suffering. The economy has deteriorated with increased poverty and food insecurity, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Prospects for resolution: the prospects for resolving the conflict in Myanmar are bleak, with the military showing no signs of relinquishing power and the opposition fragmented. International condemnation and sanctions have had limited impact, and efforts at dialogue have largely failed. Continued resistance and international pressure are likely to shape the future of the conflict. In conclusion, the ongoing wars in Ukraine, Syria, Yemen, Ethiopia, Myanmar, and the Israel-Palestine conflict represent some of the most pressing challenges to global peace and stability. Each conflict has unique origins and dynamics, involving a complex interplay of local, regional, and international actors. The impacts are devastating, with significant humanitarian, economic, and geopolitical consequences. Efforts to resolve these conflicts require sustained international engagement, humanitarian assistance, and comprehensive peace negotiations. Only through coordinated efforts can the prospects for lasting peace be achieved, alleviating the suffering of millions affected by these tragic